Hello everyone and welcome to today's session of the new Farm Business Options series. There's a real mix of farmers out there who are looking into how to diversify their business away from core farming, including some of the biggest farms in the country. This is a brand new series, the inaugural series of Farm Business Options, and over the period of the next number of weeks, maybe months, we're going to try and bring you updates on what's happening and farmers who are trying to diversify, look at new business options on their farm. I'd like to introduce today's presenters. We have Cian Finan from the Irish Bioenergy Association, Chief Executive Officer. We've also got Ray Langton, who's the Programme Manager for the Support Scheme for Renewable Heat within Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. This webinar series is going to be recorded and it'll be available afterwards for your use. We'd love to hear from you as well, the participants. We'd like you to raise your hand or ask questions throughout the series. And for those of you who are just joining us now, you're also very, very welcome. At this stage, I'm going to hand over to our first presenter, and it's Ray Langton. And we'll ask Ray to start sharing the screen now at this stage. Ray is the SEAI Programme Manager for the SSRH, the Support Scheme for Renewable Heat. Ray has a long and successful career in the industry, initially in pharmaceuticals and later in brewing with Diageo Ireland. In 2016 and 2017, he worked in the new Central Bank of Ireland headquarters and joined SEAI in 2017 to manage the development of the support scheme for renewable heat. So Ray, I'll hand over to you at this stage. Ray, you're going to talk about...
Great, thanks very much, Barry.
And you're going to give a presentation now about the support scheme for renewable heat. At the end of that, we'll have questions and answers, and we'll also bring Cian Finan into the conversation at that stage as well. So over to you, Ray.
Great, thanks, Barry. Just checking that you can hear me okay?
Yep, hear you loud and clear.
Yep, okay, very good. So just to share my screen now. So just let me know, please, that you can see the slides.
Yeah, we can see your slides now.
Okay, so look, great. Thanks again, Barry, and thanks everybody for dialing in this morning. It's a great opportunity from an SEAI point of view to join this initiative on farm business options, and to talk to you about one area that you might consider, which is renewable heat. And in essence, this is what it says on the tin, in the sense that it's a support scheme, i.e. financial support from the Exchequer for people, to encourage people like yourselves to use renewable heat as distinct from fossil fuels. So I'm going to take it through today how it works. You know, what is the scheme? I'll be using the acronym SSRH, Support Scheme for Renewable Heat, through the program, through the slides as we go through it, and I'll explain how it all hangs together, and what it's all about. In essence, it's for anybody who's using fossil fuels at the moment. Fossil fuels being oil or LPG or God forbid coal or peat, but really most people from an industrial point of view using oil or LPG. So what is the support scheme for renewable heat, and why is it there at all from a government point of view? It's designed to replace fossil fuel heating systems with either heat pumps or biomass heating systems or biogas heating systems, and I'll explain each of those as we go through. It has a very particular size in that it's designed to make a particular intervention. It's not designed to be all things to all men. It's designed to make a particular scale of change, and that is quite a big change. That 1,300 gigawatt energies of renewable heat. It's equivalent to about 3% of the heat that's used industrially, or about 120,000 homes. So it's a significant amount of heat that this support scheme is designed to flip over. And it's also an opportunity to significantly reduce your carbon footprint. So, you know, for a lot of people, that's very important, particularly in relation to any sustainable sustainable interest that you have for your business or for your farm or for whatever you do. Renewable heat is a big step in that direction. For agriculture is specifically the folk on the call here today for yourselves. So switching to biomass in particular can benefit both the supply chain. So in other words, the people who are producing the wood chips or wood pellets or whatever, and deliver direct heat saving costs to you as a user. So renewable heat, you get renewable heat, you get the sustainability and money savings at the same time. And the scheme is open now as we speak. So sorry, just move on to the next slide. Oops. Let's get used to the system here. Yeah, okay. So how does it work? It's a hybrid scheme. In other words, there's two different branches to the scheme. And some of the language here, the language is official sort of legalistic language, but an investment aid basically means a grant. So it's either a grant or it's what we call operational aid, which is whereby you get an amount of money for the actual heat use. So the investment aid applies, it's a grant of 30% for heat pumps. So basically any type of heat pump, an air source heat pump, a ground source heat pump, or a water source heat pump. And you get a grant for that equipment. And that is the support that you get. The other option is, as I say, operational aid, which is based on the amount of heat, eligible heat used. And it's a bit like the reverse of your electricity bill. You get a tariff, which is tiered, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. In other words, it reduces as you get into bigger and bigger heat uses. It's paid on an ongoing quarterly basis. And it's paid for 15 years. So there's a contract that we enter into with the applicant, the successful applicant. We pay every quarter in arrears for 15 years on the basis of the heat meter readings. And that's for biomass heating systems, i.e. wood chip or wood pellets, or heating systems run from an anaerobic digestion source. So you know, AD sources for producing biogas, those kind of heating systems as well. So just looking at how the tariff works, it's based on what we call usable and eligible heat output. So the heat obviously has to be from renewable heating systems, as I just described, not heat from your oil system or whatever. We don't pay for that. It can be either existing installations, so in other words, existing businesses. If you have a poultry farm or a general farm or a pig farm, whatever, if you already have that type of business, and you convert from fossil fuel. So as I said at the start, this is a conversion scheme. So we want to get you off the fossil fuel basically and onto the renewable fuel. Or it could be new installations, and the phrase we use there is that it has a counterfactual. And what I mean by that is that we can support some new installations that really have no alternative. So there are some legalistic requirements in some areas of new buildings. Now, generally not in agriculture, to be honest, but in some new with new office buildings, for example, they have to be up to a certain standard and they have to have a certain proportion of renewables by law. So this support scheme won't pay for something that you have to do by law. That's generally not of relevance to agriculture. But if there's any of those kind of areas that you're unsure of, we can tease that out with you. And what happens here then is that if you see tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, this refers to and columns, the third column there, the upper limit where it says 300, 1000, 2400. These are heat measures, and megawatt hours are just the units that heat, or indeed any energy is measured in. And for the first 300, you get 5.66 cents per megawatt hour. And that, if you do the maths on that comes out at about 16 and a half, nearly 17,000 euro. Then you go into another bracket, you continue to hold on to what you have in the first tier, and if you're using more, you get a little more of this, and so on and so forth. Typically, agricultural applications would be in tier 2 somewhere, typically. We have had an occasional very small one, and I think we might have had one that just went into tier 3, but generally they'd be somewhere in the bracket of 300 to 1,000. So here, this is an example of the point I just raised, and I suppose the first thing to say about this example is that the figures are purely hypothetical. These are purely just for illustrative purposes to show how it all hangs together. What you need to do for yourself in thinking about this, I suppose, is go back to the fundamental and ask yourself, are you using fossil fuels? So if you're using natural gas or LPG or kerosene or gas oil, any of those kind of things, then this could be for you. And the first place to start, I suppose, is how much fuel are you using? So have a look at your bills over, typically take a year. You probably have a fair idea of that already, but your bill will show obviously the cost, but it'll also show the units, the number of liters and so on that you've used. That's easily converted then into an energy equivalent. And if you need any help with that, contact us. We'll show you how to convert into the amount of heat. But in this particular example, I'm showing an applicant. As you can see on the pictures, it doesn't matter what the business is. It could be an agriculture like a chicken farm, or it could be a hotel. This particular project, to put their new heating system in, is going to cost them 180,000. The amount of heat that they're using is 1,100 megawatt hours. And the support scheme then, as per the table I just showed you a minute ago, gives the first 300, gives you 16,980. The next 700, they're getting at 30.2, comes in another 21,000, and they have 100 over the 1,000, it's 1,100 at 5, and the grand total that the SSRH support scheme will pay in this particular example is 38,620 every year for 15 years. And then you build into your own calculations then, how much your fuel use. I'm showing an example here using natural gas, and natural gas is the cheapest of the fossil fuels. So LPG is considerably more expensive, and kerosene more expensive again. You can work out how much wood pellets you would have to buy, or wood chips would be cheaper. We would typically say, for your own sake, allow a little bit of an operational cost. There is a little bit more handling and a little bit more TLC required for a biomass system than a typical fossil fuel system. And in this particular example, if you put all those numbers into the hat, this one is showing a net saving of 23,620 per year. But as I say, this is purely just an example, and what you should do, as I say, is have a look at your own system, look at how much you're using, apply the spreadsheet, the calculations that I showed you to your one, and just get a feel for whether there is something in this for you, because it is a very good scheme. In terms of how do you apply, everything is online. We have an online portal on the SEAI site. Again, if you have any difficulty with that, contact SEAI. We'll talk you through it. There's a lot of technical documentation required. It's not a very simple application, I'll have to admit. And the reason for that is that we are entering into a 15-year contract. And if you think, though, the example that I just used there, it was over 30,000 per year for 15 years. That's 450,000 of a contract that we're entering into. So there is quite an amount of documentation that we require from you as an applicant to make sure that the heating system you're putting in is up to standard, is capable of doing the job, and is capable of delivering, and that the heat use that you have is fair and proper. So we bring you through all of that. You get a letter of offer when you get to the stage of it being a successful applicant. You then go off and install your equipment. I would say just be very careful on that sequence. That's a very important sequence. And the reason it's so important is you have to think of this scheme as being an incentive scheme for you to do something that you would not otherwise do. That's how the state support scheme works. If it's something that you're going to do anyway, to be blunt about it, or you've done already, or you've installed equipment before a letter of offer, then there is no incentive required in a legal sense, and you just fall over. So make sure that you go through the application, get approved, only then start your installation. You come back to us whenever, let's say 6 months later or whatever the project is now in. We get involved in the completion and inspection stage, verifying that you have done the project that you said you were going to do, and then you move into a payment and contract stage. And there are ongoing obligations, and I'll talk you through what they are. Basically, you have to continue to operate the plant as designed. So who can apply, and what can you heat? Eligible applicants, basically anyone in the commercial, industrial, agriculture, as folk on the call here today, public sector or district heating. So basically anyone in that commercial sector. Not what we call the emissions trading scheme. I don't think there'll be anybody on the call here today, but the emission trading scheme basically are very big energy users, big organizations who trade carbon credits. You'll know if you're in it, and I wouldn't expect any ordinary agriculture users to be in it. Are not single domestic, so not individuals' houses, not Ray Langton's house, are not a house. Not your farmhouse, your primary farmhouse. If there's multiple units, then you are basically a district heating system. That's a different thing. But your own private farmhouse, it would be regarded as single domestic, and that's not eligible. It's not a domestic scheme. What can you heat? Within reason, you can heat most things. So space heating is about heating the air, basically for either people or guests, if you happen to have a guest house portion of your business, or for animals or whatever. Water heating, process heating, if you're into pasteurization or making cheeses or anything like that, any kind of process heating. There are some exclusions, and they tend to revolve around efficiency. So not open spaces. Those I'd have to say those awful things that you see outside pubs now, heating the fresh air outside. It's just such a waste. So not that type of heat. Not fuel drying either. Fuel drying is excluded on the basis that drying the fuel to put into a heating system and then claim the heat again. It's seen as a double payment. And not heat that's used in electricity generation. So again, I wouldn't expect that to apply to yourself, but in some very specific industrial applications, heat can be used for generating electricity. So not that. So generally, as I say, the type of heat that you would normally use on an agricultural base would be eligible. It obviously has to be produced, as I said, from an eligible installation. So the installation has to be up to eco-design standards, the right quality of certified piece of boiler equipment, and it has to be metered with very specific meters at the point of use, because we pay for it on the basis of meters. The other one to watch out is the last one there. It's not heat produced for the purpose of receiving SSRH. So what that means basically is that we're not in the business here of trying to generate more heat for Ireland per se. So it's heat that you would have used anyway in your business. So if there was a flippant example, if somebody dreams up some type of heat that now, because there's an SSRH, just a bit of business to, I don't know, to do something strange like dry Christmas trees or something that you wouldn't otherwise do in a normal economic circumstances, and we're not interested in getting involved in generating new heat uses in that sense. But economic heat use for pigs, chickens, mushrooms, any of those kind of things are all eligible purposes. As it says, with all of these schemes, terms and conditions apply, and there's a huge amount of detail on the terms and conditions on the website. But the general ones I'll draw out here, which are an overall, I suppose, philosophy really from an SEAI point of view, that energy efficiency should come first. And this is a win-win situation when you think of it. We would say from an SEAI point of view that the best energy of all is the energy you don't use. So we would encourage you, and through the application process, draw you through your energy use, what we call knowing your baseline, knowing what your energy performance is. Is there any obvious or easy ways that you could get that down first? And we would want to see that you're aware of your energy management, that you can describe where your energy goes, and you understand it, and you understand the basic philosophy behind keeping energy down. We ask you to carry out an energy efficiency evaluation where we use what we call benchmarks. So we have benchmarks from Teagasc, and Teagasc have been very helpful in this regard. So we know what a typical amount of heat is used to generate a kilo of mushrooms, or to raise a bird in the poultry sense, or to raise pigs, and so on. And this is to make sure that we don't end up with some of the issues that arose in some other jurisdictions where basically heat is just going out through open windows and so on. And particularly then in relation to space heating, we do want you to optimize the building from a heat retention point of view. So again, we're not heating buildings with open windows and that type of thing. The installation itself obviously has to be biomass or biogas. A boiler, or what's known as a high efficiency combined heat and power plant, again wouldn't be typical in agriculture based, but can be used. This is a piece of equipment that, as it says, generates both electricity and heat at the same time. The equipment, the boiler, typically has to be purchased as new, and it has to have meters at the point of use, up to a particular standard of meters. And the whole thing has to be designed and installed by a competent person, a design engineer who understands this area of expertise and brings that expertise to the party, as it were. In terms of some of the learnings that we've got to date, I would say it's very important to think of that design from a holistic point of view. And what I mean by that is it's not just a case of taking out an old oil boiler and putting in a new biomass boiler. Think of the whole heat service itself. How is it going to work? Are you going to use some old components like old radiators? And that's okay, but just build that into the design. Obviously, does it deliver the heat needs that you want? Is it man enough for the job? Is it fit for purpose? But also think through implications, and these things like planning, building, safety systems, EPA licensing. These are not SSRH driven requirements. These are the cost of living in Ireland. So, for example, if your new heating system requires a new plant room, for example, you may have planning permission requirements there, and build that into your design. Make sure that you know that there are planning, or maybe not. Maybe there are no planning implications that you're using existing buildings. The same way, if there's the building itself, if, as I say, the boiler room or whatever, if there are building regulations about that, we ask that the design engineer draws that out and articulates that to the SEAI from the start, and basically commits to delivering on that. Safety systems in relation to carbon monoxide build-up and building regulations and fuel storage and so on. The other one to watch from an agricultural point of view, particularly if you're involved in intensive agriculture, is around EPA licensing. So if you have an EPA license, read it. It's quite likely that your EPA license is specific to the fuel you use, and it's quite likely that you will have to renew your license if you change the fuel use. So in terms of sustainability then, and ongoing obligations, having got through the application process and having installed the equipment and being on what we call the payment cycle, you're now doing business with us. There are requirements that you continue to maintain the sustainability of the plant. So the biomass fuel criteria have to be honoured for the full 15 years, and they boil down to sourcing of the material. So it has to be sourced from eligible lands, not from protected lands or wetlands or whatever. And again, these are standard forestry requirements. There are limits on the greenhouse gas element of the fuel, would not normally be a problem, to be quite frank, for biomass. But we can talk you through that in detail. But most 99.99 sources of biomass and will be fine from a greenhouse gas point of view. The idea there is to stop people shipping biomass around the world from Australia or whatever. If it's biogas system that you're going down, it has to be from an anaerobic digestion. You will see references on the internet to other types of biogas, but it's very specific that it's anaerobic digestion. Fuel quality standards have to apply, and air quality standards. So Cian is on the call here today from IrBEA. We would look at and do ask that it meets the wood fuel quality criteria, for example, which is an excellent scheme run by IrBEA. The ongoing obligations basically then are that you retain the eligibility criteria for the 15 years. So obviously you have to measure and report. You won't get quarterly payments unless you measure. The fuel quality has to be retained, so keep receipts so that you can show at any one time that you're not using illegitimate fuel. You're not burning coal in the biomass boiler. We want to see that you did use the right amount of fuel, the right quality of fuel. We insist on you operating and maintaining the plant as it should. So if the boiler supplier says, for example, that every year or every 2 years it needs to be serviced, we want to see that does take place and that you keep records of that, and you are open to periodic inspection then as well. So coming through that, then you're basically in a SSRH agreement or a contract, and that contract, as I said, a 15-year contract, is for a very specific heating installation. It's not a blank check. It's for your heating system that you've told us about, your heating equipment. So you can't move it and bring it to somebody else's neighbor's farm or whatever. It's for that very specific heat use at that energy efficiency that you undertake to maintain that, not to start opening the windows the minute you put the plant in. You wouldn't want to do this anyway, but these are important principles. It's for a very specific amount of heat, a size, a cap. So we agree a cap based on your heat use and based on what business you're producing, and the number, if you're producing 500,000 birds or whatever, there'd be a particular heat cap for that. And that translates into an annual budget cap, and that's very important from an exchequer point of view, that it stops the scheme running away with itself. This happened, for example, in Northern Ireland, where the budgets just went crazy. But all the heat caps, all the specific projects that we have, then we know what the government commitments are by adding them all up. And your ongoing obligations, as I said, are there. So once you continue to maintain those, the payments would continue for the 15 years. So that's it really. What I would say in summary is that the SSRI, the support scheme for renewable heat, it is a real opportunity, but from a financial point of view and from a sustainability point of view, it can benefit yourself as a heat user, but also the supply chain, the suppliers of biomass and so on. And we from an SEAI point of view can help you to use less and use renewable. It's open now. If you're using fossil fuels, work it through for yourself. Come back to us if you have any questions, and we'll talk it through with you. So thanks, Barry. I think I can hand back to yourself at this stage.
That's great, Ray. Thank you very much for that. And we're going to take questions and answers from you just
sure.
Well, Ray. There's a number of questions coming in already, and for any of you there on the participants, you can put in your questions to the Q&A function at the bottom tab there below any questions for Ray. I'd just like to introduce our second panelist now at this stage. That's Cian Finan, and Ray, you can leave your camera on as well at this stage. But Cian Finan, Cian, you can put on your camera as well, please. Cian is the Chief Executive Officer with IrBEA, that's the Irish Bioenergy Association. He is a Chartered Engineer and holds a Bachelor of Civil Engineering Honours degree from the National University of Ireland, Galway. Prior to joining IrBEA, he has over 12 years engineering and management experience with John Sisk & Son. He took a 2-year secondment from Sisk in 2015 to 2017 to complete a full-time elected role as the 35th National President of Macrona Pharma, the Young Farmers Representative Organisation. Cian's key role is to lead IrBEA and its members to develop the bioenergy sector in Ireland, He's also directly involved in IrBEA projects that takes a lead role in the EIP Small Biogas Demonstration Project and the Interreg NWE Redirect Project. Cian, you're very, very welcome. Thanks
Barry, for having me.
Cian, the Irish Bioenergy Association has been lobbying for a long number of years on the whole area of a renewable heat scheme, something to promote the use of bioenergy in Ireland. Is there much interest in the scheme amongst your members?
Yes, Barry. We've been lobbying for a long number of years and have developed documents and papers over the years which showed the need and the benefits that a scheme would deliver. There is considerable interest, or there was considerable interest initially in terms of when the scheme was launched back in June 2019. And there has been a number of applications made and a number of letters of offers issued. I suppose with COVID and also with the start of a scheme, we have seen that probably levels of interest has maybe waned in the last number of weeks and months. But we believe that once things maybe get back on track after COVID, and also once the first payments start to issue, that there will be significant uptake in the SSRH scheme, because it is a good scheme. It has received widespread acclaim from the various stakeholders within the industry. But obviously, like any scheme that's starting out, there are teething problems, there are issues to be ironed out, and we're taking an active role with the SEAI to work on those and to try and move the scheme forward in terms of the current payment applications, which are currently in for payment with Ray and his team.
And can you elaborate on some of those kind of teething problems that you're experiencing?
Yeah, well, as I said, like every scheme that's announced, no matter what sector it falls under, you would always have a bedding in period and an implementation kind of phase to get things up and running. The issues that our members would be identifying would be, just to be very clear, and Ray has outlined in his presentation this morning, and we've been asking for SEAI just to be very clear on the steps or the requirements involved in and paperwork that's required in order at the various stages of the process. We've also been talking with the SEAI to ensure that communications are always very open in terms of the applicant and SEAI around any of the issues which have been identified, or any of the issues which are queries which are raised. So that's a very important thing. We would like clarity from the SEAI in terms of how long that it's going to take for each application to move through the various stages. But I suppose fundamentally, the biggest item, and probably the one that's causing the most frustration to our members and indeed some of the early applicants, is just to get those first payments processed and those first payments made. So we have very clearly articulated and met with the SEAI a number of occasions and worked very closely with Ray on the various aspects and various issues. And we indeed hope to we will continue that until such time as we have the scheme rolling out efficiently and swiftly, and projects are starting to be developed and to be processed. But I think maybe our window for getting those payments issued and getting those applications through needs to tighten up, I suppose, and needs to be done as swiftly as possible for the betterment of the scheme moving forward.
Cian, I remember back in 2006 or 2007, there was over 100 different suppliers of biomass heating technologies at that time, and you could see large numbers exhibiting at the likes of the annual SEAI Energy Show. And then you could really notice then that those technology suppliers started to dwindle off as there was no heat scheme being introduced and there was no uptake on biomass boilers. Are you seeing a reversal of that now, that more technology providers coming on stream as a result of the SSRH?
Well, the biomass heating sector is quite an established sector across Europe. So we have some Irish manufacturers of boiler systems, and we also have many European actors in this space, manufacturers and technology providers. We haven't seen any, as you're correct in stating, Barry, that there was probably many more technology providers in this space going back the years. But in Ireland, we do believe that as the scheme opens up, as the scheme develops and rolls out, that it will provide opportunities for our members, which are the biomass installers and indeed the biomass designers who are based here. There will be opportunities maybe for others to get into that market, but there is a core grouping of installers who are in the business at the moment, and really it's a case of developing that business as a result of the SSRH and as a result of the support scheme which is in place. So to answer your question, there was probably a lot more around going back the years, and as a result of no support scheme being in place, there would have been a fall off. But we have had a number of businesses that have maintained their business, that have worked on their business and that have developed it, and there probably will be opportunities for others to get involved in this space in the near future as things move along.
Sean, you're farming yourself and you're former president of Backward Pharma. Where do you see the opportunities for agriculture in this whole biomass industry?
Well, obviously the support scheme for renewable heat offers opportunities, particularly for the more intensive sectors where heat demand is quite high. We shouldn't forget that this is a scheme that's for biomass plus biogas. The tariff supports for the biogas side are at a lower level, so they're for smaller type installations rather than the large biomethane or CHP plants, which are being proposed as more of a medium to large scale industry across the country. So as a farmer and from a farming perspective, we see considerable opportunity, particularly in the intensive sectors, in the pig, the poultry, the horticulture, mushrooms, all those sectors where there is a heat demand, where that heat demand requirement is consistent along, and that is offsetting a fossil fuel. Also, we have renewable heat targets to address as part of our energy targets, which is very, very important. And decarbonisation of the heat sector will be a challenge, and this support scheme goes some way towards helping and assisting with that. We probably need to see more and further schemes for larger industry users and other, and also at a domestic level to ensure that we can achieve all the targets which are there from a heat perspective. But there are certainly opportunities, I suppose, on one hand for farmers and businesses to install these systems and to get support, but also for farmers then in the form of forestry, in the form of various energy crops and utilising various biomass sources that are available on farms. That opportunity could be in growing those materials or those inputs, or indeed potentially setting up businesses to process those, to provide them to the sector and the industry.
Yeah, and a lot of what you're saying fits in with EU policy and the likes of the latest farm to fork strategy as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and just to, Ray, if I can go to you there, is there many applications gone in on from the agricultural sector so far? How many have gone in total? How many of that will be from the agricultural sector? And is there any particular sector like pigs or poultry or horticulture that Sean alluded to there that you're noticing?
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Yes, there is a lot in from agriculture. So just off the top of my head, we've got about 80 applications in total. More than 2/3 of those would be from the agriculture sector, probably 3/4. I can get you the exact figures, but just off the top of my head. And then when you break down the agriculture sector, you know, there are the obvious heat users. So poultry is probably the biggest of the agriculture sector. It's the biggest single tranche of applications that we've got. We certainly would have 20, 25, maybe 30 poultry applications. We've also got pig producers, mushrooms. We have a smaller number of horticulture, not that many, but there are some. And then other sectors then in the nursing homes, hotels, leisure centres, and so on. But we've got most of the intensive agriculture sectors.
And Ray, you mentioned there that it's only available for non-domestic applications, and agriculture is included in that. What defines a farm business from a domestic business? If my ESB meter, for example, is the same as for the farm and the house, and is in proximity to the poultry or the pig unit, can I get the SSRH for my house? And how will the house be deducted for here?
Yeah. So let's just pick through a couple of questions and what you said there, Barry. The bottom line, I suppose, to be frank, is you can't get your house. So it's not, there are schemes for domestic purposes. So your house has to be excluded. Normally you would be on a separate meter for certainly from a heating point of view. You can have the same heating system though. So if it engineering wise it made sense to have the same boiler supplying the house and the farm, that's okay. And what we would do under those circumstances is we'd insist that you put a meter on the house bit, so that you didn't include that basically, or you subtracted that. So we wouldn't insist on you having to put in a dual engineered system unless that was the right thing to do. And I think you asked then what defines a house. We talk about single domestic. So there are scenarios where a group of single domestic can come in. Again, it's hard to think of them from an agriculture point of view, but a block of student accommodation, for example, or a group of holiday cottages or something like that, which might border onto an agricultural mixed environment. That would be fine. They would be, as I said earlier, regarded as small district heating systems. But it specifically calls out in the SSRH that not domestic or not single domestic that are combined with, so if you've got to move it away from the agriculture for a second, if you've got the pub and the publican living over the pub, you can't include that part of it. And similarly, a classic farm with a farmhouse and an attached farm would not qualify. The house bit would not qualify. Does that clear?
It does, yeah. There's a number of queries coming in, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague Cian Condon after this for some of the other queries coming in. But just a number of them that are coming in are saying that there's a number of situations where biomass boiler heating systems were installed and became operational with heat meters running, and claims for payment of the SSRH operational aid were made. However, no payment has been received by the SSRH clients under the scheme to date. Now, Sean kind of alluded to this a while ago. Is that COVID related? Are you not able to do inspections?
Yeah, it's not, to be honest, directly COVID related. It's related to the point that Sean articulated there about it is a new scheme. If you stand back from where the SSRH is in general, it opened in mid 2019. It's at the stage as a scheme now where the early applicants are going live. And I suppose in terms of getting through that process about what is required to commission the plan, to make sure that the meters are commissioned properly and so on and so forth, we've had a good bit of back and forward with some of the early applications. And that's why I said, for example, on the presentation, to make sure from a holistic point of view that haven't been issues with planning and so on. So I suppose that to cut through and answer the question, there have been some difficulties and delays with the early ones. I suppose what I would say to people who are on the call now is that you'll enjoy the success of that, and that the ones who are not the early ones it's much clearer as to what exactly is required, and we will get those applications up and running. But some of the early ones certainly did have delays. I agree, and we're working through those on a case-by-case basis at the moment, and there's a lot more clarity. Sean's IrBEA have been very helpful to us in terms of communicating some of that clarity. There have been examples, of some early ones that didn't think about planning permission or didn't think about building regulations, and there's been examples from an SEAI point of view as well where we didn't make it as clear as we should have in relation to what the documentation was required and so on. And I think we're in a better place now. So don't be put off by the fact that some of the very early applications took some time to get on the payments cycle. As I say, later applications, it should be easier.
Okay, thanks, Ray. And Sean, what are your members saying about the application process, the bureaucracy maybe of the scheme? Is there much angst there about it?
As Ray has alluded to, we have gone through a process over the last number of months where the early applications have been taken through the various steps involved in the application process. We have engaged with the SEAI to try and streamline that process as much as possible. But there is a frustration, I think, amongst some of the early adopters or the early applicants who have their systems installed early in the year, have payment applications put in, that they need to get their money or they need to see the money flowing in terms of the scheme, because they have loans, they have they're paying for their inputs, they're paying their for the actual system itself if they took out borrowings to develop it, and they're under pressure because they're farm businesses which are generally under pressure anyways. So we would see that it's very important that the initial, I suppose, 8 to 10 or 12 early adopters and applications are put through the process as quickly as possible, and that then sends out a positive message to the broader industry, because there's a lot of other projects out there which are waiting to fully see what is the outcome of the early stage applications. And once that's known, I think that will have a significant impact on whether a lot of the other projects proceed that have letters of offer. So it would be remiss of me not to maybe say that there is a level of frustration out there. I'm getting it from our installer members who are working on behalf of their clients, but also directly from the farmer clients who have systems installed. And I think we have met SEAI, we've met Ray and his team, and we've very clearly articulated that frustration. And I know that Ray and his team understand that frustration and are working to see how they can get inspections completed, get payments issuing, and then we can all collectively move forward in terms of active promotion of this support to ensure that it is successful and that we do achieve the 1,300 gigawatt hours of heat per year, which is the government or the target which has been set out when Minister Bruton, the minister at the time, announced the scheme. Just a couple of other points, Barry, that we are also involved from a number of other fronts in terms of the wood fuel quality assurance scheme, the WFQA. We also have a register of biomass designers and installers, so we can assist potential clients or potential farmers that are that want to avail of the scheme by putting them in touch with competent designers and installers, because there's a number of key aspects to ensure that a system operates efficiently and effectively, and design is very, very important. We roll out a course for designers and installers to make sure that they have the skills that they need in order to properly design and install systems. Obviously, then the quality of the fuel is very important, and then prior to that, the quality of the installation is also very important. That it's a system that, or an installer that is fully up to speed and aware of what their own boiler requirements are in terms of the installation, and that it's installed to the highest standard so that it's producing the optimum heat and producing what it should produce.
Where can people find more information about that? John? Where can people?
Sorry, Barry.
Where can you find more information about that installer's course?
Well, just on our website on IrBEA, irbea.org, there's a section at the top called Schemes, and the 2 registers are listed there, and also the WFQA, the full details are there, and there's a separate website. So if there's any fuel suppliers that are on the webinar this morning that would like to supply fuel to boilers which are going to be installed through the SSRH, then as an organization, they should get in touch with us, and we can take them through the certification process to ensure their fuels can be used. Yeah. And also, as part, it's a prerequisite for the designers and installers to be listed on the register that they have completed a course, a 2-day course, because we haven't had an industry in the country for a number of years. It is important that everyone is brought up to speed in terms of the key aspects associated with the design and install of biomass systems. So we offer that course as part of our register for technology providers, designers and installers.
Yeah, they're 2 fantastic initiatives by the Irish Bioenergy Association, and I suppose supporting and promoting best practice within the industry. Ray, you wanted to come in there as well, did you?
Well, I was just going to, and thanks, Sean. I was just going to say there's a number of questions. If you want me to rattle through some of them are very quick answers. I can see them here.
I'll go to Cian there. Cian, can you come in there on the questions there, and maybe you can bring them together?
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me there okay?
We can.
So as Ray alluded to there, the first is coming in specifically poultry, but I suppose it addresses or is applicable for pigs or new cheese producers. That is, can somebody that is setting up an initial business now avail of it, or is it purely for conversion to renewables?
So the answer is yes, Cian. They can avail of it, but this goes back to the concept I referred to earlier with that legalistic language of having a counterfactual. So if somebody is producing, for example, thinking about putting in a new poultry farm, and basically if they have a choice, which normally they would, have a choice of using fossil fuel or biomass, then they can avail of it. And in essence, when you think about what they are doing is presenting to SEAI that option, and the support would push them in the direction of biomass. If for some strange reason, I can't really see it in an agricultural circumstance, but if they didn't have a choice, I was trying to use an example of new buildings and office buildings earlier, then they can't be supported for something they had to do legally. So yes is the answer. New plant can be included.
So again, another one then, there's a lot of discussion when somebody's setting up various different bits and pieces about the funding that's available from the likes of Leader or so on, and is where heat pump or the like is put in with Leader funding, is that can there be additional funding then from the SSRH scheme?
Sure, and the key point with that is to that under any circumstances there can't be what's called dual funding for the same thing. So what we need to do is pick through what is being funded. So if you take the heating system, for example, if somebody's putting in a biomass system, biomass boiler, if that biomass boiler has been funded or part funded under a Leader scheme, you can't go down the SSR. You can go one or the other, and you can choose which one. On the other hand, if the Leader scheme has supported things other than the biomass, for example, the building of the sheds themselves, or the slatted area, or whatever, or other aspects, that's fine. So it's really to define what is the funding. You can't go to two pots for the same thing, and that's not purely an SSRH thing. That's generally a state funding question. So you can get Leader funding and SSRH. You can actually get support from SEAI in two cases. Sometimes there might be SEAI support for, I don't know, insulating the building, for example. That's not this. It's not for the same thing. Once it's not for the same thing, it's okay.
And just a more technical question that's come in here is, how does the scheme compare to the IrBEA recommendations for biomethane rather than CHP?
I can take that, Cian, if you want.
Okay, yeah, Sean.
Thanks, John.
So our proposal, and I think the proposal that's been referred to here is our policy paper on how to mobilise a biomethane industry in the country. Now we're not, that's a totally different scale and size. It's for medium to large scale installations, whereas the biogas support, which is available through SSRH, is for more smaller scale installations, and it is lucrative for a particular size and scale of biogas, which would be located on a farm, satisfying a on-farm energy demand, heat demand. So it's completely separate in terms of the support requirements that are available through the SSRH, and what we are lobbying separately for biomethane, and indeed for CHP support, maybe through RES or other options. So it's two totally different models and scales and different sizes of industry we're talking about here. But just to one final point on the biogas, we have a number of farmers who are, I understand there's no application yet through the biogas support, but we have a number of farmers who we're working with who will be in a position to submit applications, and that's also a positive development for those farmers who want to install systems on their farms.
Thanks very much for that, Sean. One question is coming in here. Can I add additional capacity to my existing systems? Say I get an additional birdhouse or farrowing unit. Can I add an additional 200 kilowatt boiler to account for the increased heat requirement?
Yeah, you can, but it's not easy from an SSRH point of view in the sense that what we would encourage people to do if they see if they have plans, if they know they have plans, if they have 2 chicken sheds at the moment and they know they're going to put a 3rd house in or 4th house, it's easier to wrap it into the application and get that done. But obviously people change their business and things can expand. So yes is the answer, but you have to reapply, because if you remember what I said about that there is a specific contract for a specific size, and it protects the budget around SSRH. So you can reapply. You have to go around the houses again and get it approved, as it were, and then it becomes an add-on to it's wrapped back into one, so it becomes part of the same application again.
Okay, I own a poultry unit, but I want to upgrade from propane gas to biomass straight away. Can I proceed with the new building and boiler system and apply for the SSRH at the same time?
I think you can. You just need to be careful there. The reason I'm hesitating a little bit is keep in mind that the incentive effect, and this is the principle of this. If you have progressed a project to a next stage where you have no choice, what in essence you are saying is that you don't need support to do this. So if you're building something and you haven't gone near the heating system and you still have that option of going propane or going, so it's a very formalistic and really important sequence of events that you do it in that right sequence, and you get approval while you still are at that choice stage. So don't back yourself into a situation where you have already committed to something, because legally what you're saying is, I'm going to do this whether you support me or not. And that comes back then to the legal trap that the state is in, that if you are saying that, then why would the state support you to do it? So just keep that principle in mind.
Cian, have you any other questions there?
Just the final one really then is about the actual process, and I know that it's been mentioned already about somewhat delays of that. So firstly, two parts is, do you feel that the delays are actually deterring farmers from pursuing with the scheme? And secondly then is, where somebody applies for the scheme now, is can they be guaranteed that they'll actually be accepted and avail funding?
I suppose there's a couple of things in what you're saying, Cian, and Sean articulated it very, very well earlier. I suppose it was, to be fully honest and frank, it is, I suspect, I don't know, causing a reticence at the moment until we get through and get a bit slicker on getting applications through. And I'm absolutely sure that will happen. So I wouldn't apply the sins of the past to the future. So don't be put off from that point of view. You said, can somebody be guaranteed? You can't be guaranteed until you get an application approved. So that's the process. So there's nothing guaranteed until an application is approved. But I think there was something in the question as well about, implied in the question, I'm not sure, implied in the question about is the funding still there or whatever. The funding is there. And that scale that I talked about at the start to get 1,300 gigawatts, that it's in the state plan that to support that over the coming years. So there is nothing is guaranteed until you get it, but there's no fear in the short term that certainly that I would be aware of running out of funding in the coming years.
Can I just make one final point, Barry, on that?
Yeah, I just want one final question here, because we've run out of time. I had a biomass boiler in the past, but I reverted to oil or kerosene last year. Can I now avail of the SSRH?
Yeah, there's an important point here is that this is a conversion scheme. So, and except that it is disappointing for early adopters or whatever, if they're on biomass at the moment, you can't get support for all the points that I talked about earlier. If you were in biomass 2 generations back, as it were, you were on biomass and you're currently on fossil fuel, then we want you back in the tent. We want to get rid of that fossil fuel. So it's a question of what are we on now. We would typically look for a year's evidence of what you've been on.
All right, Sean, final word with you.
Yeah, no, just I wanted to make a point just on the previous questions from Cian there, just around the delays maybe and the frustrations. I just wanted to say that really our window is closing in terms of moving this forward, and I know that we've very clearly articulated that to Ray and his team, but fundamentally I think we need to send out a message that this scheme is a positive scheme for the sector and the industry. It offers significant opportunity for certain sectors to decarbonize their heating systems, and we do hope that the SEAI will work, and we're working very closely with them to ensure that those first early adopters get their payments as soon as possible, and that will also then open up the next tranche in terms of letters of offer, which are out there at the moment in terms of starting their projects.
Okay, folks, we really have to leave it there, and I want to thank our panelists today: Sean Finan, CEO of the Irish Bioenergy Association; Ray Langton, Programme Manager for SEAI's SSRH Support Scheme for Renewable Heat. I want to thank my colleague Cian Condon for doing the questions and helping me with today's webinar. And next week on Farm Business Options, this will be a weekly seminar. It'll run every Tuesday from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Next week, we'll be talking about supports for diversification in businesses, and that'll be Alan McAdam from MCA Consulting. So we'll join us please next week at 11 o'clock. Thank you to everyone, and we look forward to talking to you next week, and bye-bye.